Hello, beautiful souls. I am Valeria Maritza, your host here at Healing Through You. I am an infinite being of light, and so are you. My guest today is Jenny Peterson. She's a chronic illness expert, and I am so excited to bring her here to you so that you can hear her story and get to see the different parts that we don't really usually see every day and see how it resonates with you. We'll just dive right in right deeply into this. So, hello, how are you doing, Jenny?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Valeria.
I'm so excited to have you here. So, let's just get started. Tell us a little bit about where you were before um, your awareness, becoming aware of what was happening in your life.
I guess, it really goes back to probably in my early 20s when I was operating a health and wellness center. So right out of high school, due to a lot of health issues that I had while in high school, I learned about natural health and it was really intriguing to me. So I got my certifications in many things and said, let's go start a health and wellness center. And I did that at a very young age and really didn't know anything about business, but I was a go-getter, constantly moving, constantly working, and eventually just really extremely overwhelmed from owning a business. So while I was, you know, saying I could help people, underneath, I was an internal mess because I just didn't run my business in a healthy way, number one. But number two is just there was a lot of parts of me that were unhealed. And I didn't know that at the time.
Well, you
But
were
my life had,
19.
yeah, exactly. It's just not aware, uh, emotionally, just not in a healthy place, intelligence wise, that way as well. So there's just a lack of awareness, I think, when you're at that age, unless it's forced upon you.
Mhm.
And I was running my health and wellness center for it was almost 10 years in a state of overwhelm, in a state of just chronic busyness to where I was burning myself out. I had a very successful business, and I was helping people using supplements and diet protocols and things like that, a lot of what's in the holistic space. But I also was feeling really stuck because I also did energy work, spiritual work on some level. I was dowsing and muscle testing people for their supplements and finding some emotional stuff, but really never got to the core of, these subconscious patterns that I eventually realized were driving the bus for a majority of people's issues. So it was quite an adventure, and I didn't physically like have any health issues during that time, besides just feeling exhausted and just keep moving. But that is essentially what was all happening prior to my symptoms all showing in my huge, explosion.
So, Jenny, let me just stop you there for a second and ask you, at 19 years old, how is it that a 19-year-old starts a business? Like, I remember 19, I was just going to college. I know my nieces and nephews now who are like around that age, and it feels like there's like no direction of like what they want to be or what they want to study. So, how does a 19-year-old I mean, I know you said you were ill and that gave you that will of wanting to study that and go deeper into it and wanting to help. But how do you start at 19 and what kind of support did you have?
Well, I guess I'll have to say I came out of the womb an entrepreneur. I had my business, not the health and wellness center, but I had businesses since I was like 9 years old. I was cleaning people's houses at 9. I remember 9 and 10, I was cleaning people's houses, cutting lawns. I remember, neighborhood families or just people coming to pick me up so I could come and clean their house or cut their lawn because I didn't have my license. Obviously, my mom was a single mom. So there was always an entrepreneur in me. You wouldn't find me babysitting. When I was younger, I was going to work and creating some type of business out of what I was doing. So
Wow.
by the time my parents were separated, and my mom, she was working and I had to keep myself busy, but work ethic has always been something, regardless if my parents were separated, both my parents have really good work ethic. And I don't know what it is about what they said or anything. I don't even know if they said anything. It was just something within me that I wanted to do was have my own business. And I've had my own business literally since I've been 9. I have worked one time in teenage years waitressing, but other than that, it's always been entrepreneurship.
I love it. It's so forward, and this is how I feel. Like I was talking about my niece and nephews before. It's like that's the new wave, but you were doing that new wave, in your own time, and it's like wow. Like I love that vision and that way of doing it, and yeah, I guess you were born an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And then once I got my certifications, got out of the house, and I left home when I was right at 18 and living on my own. And it was more out of like stubbornness, I think, because no matter what anybody told me, I was doing it. As far as support goes, because you asked me about support. I mean, my parents supported me by saying, good job, that type of thing, but nothing else. There was no, financial support or helping me set it all up or anything. That was all me. So I was kind of on my own and I just, had to figure it out. And there was many, just like I had a business that was on the main strip in town. So a lot of business owners would come in and talk with me, probably because I was so young and they were trying to help me. And I actually had a lot of them say, you know what, we can help you out. I recommend doing this, recommend doing that. Didn't want to hear it. 20 years old, you know everything. So
Uh-huh.
I didn't really take anybody's advice. Probably I should have. And I did it on my own, made a lot of mistakes, and I don't call them mistakes. They are essentially just lessons that taught me to be better the next time. And failure has really never been something I've been scared of. Because if you're afraid of failure, you cannot be an entrepreneur. 100%. You have to be willing to fail and learn for those experiences. And I just did that with everything I did of saying, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to do this. But then working with people. When I went from cutting lawns and cleaning houses where you're just there by yourself, you're not working with actual clients, right? So then I have a health and wellness center, and now you have to have people skills and you have to have communication and boundaries and all of those things that I never was taught with anything that I studied, right? They teach you the information, but they don't teach you how to work with clients and how to set up your business and things like that. So there was a lot of trial and error. And it really made me into the person that I needed to be. But it was rough. It was definitely rough. There was some hard times.
I love that. You also mentioned about when you started your holistic business that you were doing muscle testing.
Mhm,
And I remember many years back, I went to a chiropractor who
mhm.
was doing the muscle testing to see what supplements were good for me. So kind of like what you said. And I thought it was a whole bunch of hocus pocus. I was like, he's just pressing my arm harder, and that's why it's going down. So and actually he didn't really explain much about it, about how it works or why it works. So I was like, what's he doing? Like, what does it even mean? Like he wasn't telling me what he was
Sure.
doing. And that was my first experience with muscle testing. I had no idea about it. And I really thought like what is that? What was even that? So, so for anyone who doesn't know about muscle testing, would you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. And I will say, probably with my practice, I did about 10% muscle testing and the rest was dowsing.
Okay.
Um, and either way, it's all back to the subconscious, the nervous system, and it's
Mhm.
the response of the body in response to what you're asking. So, and again, it depends. This is why I no longer do either of them, but I do douse myself every once in a while for certain things or whatever it may be. But I used to rely on it so much. That's the thing is it became a tool that I became obsessed with. Like what I was eating for dinner, I was muscle testing or dowsing myself for. It wasn't even where I even thought anymore. I didn't trust myself essentially, and I was going to this tool to constantly find confirmation. And I did that even with all of my clients. And when it comes to muscle testing or dowsing, whatever you're doing, It does depend on the practitioner. The practitioner's got to be in the right headspace and obviously ask the right questions. There are certain questions, if you phrase it a certain way, the subconscious only knows yes and no, so you have to be able to know how to phrase the question. The client needs to be properly hydrated. There has to be, kind of in a good headspace, because all of that is reflective. So, depending on the process, the accuracy of it could be anywhere between 50% to 100. I don't know. But I will be honest with you, when I was dowsing, I did outside of just supplements, and the accuracy of what I had was pretty spot on. But I got really good at it. I was doing it every single day for almost 10 years, to the point where I didn't even need to use it anymore. I just intuitively would look at somebody and be like, this is what you need, right? So that skill of listening and using my subconscious and referencing that eventually led to what I'm doing now, where I just let go of that and went with my inner guide rather than relying on this external tool. Well, essentially a tool that felt external, but it is kind of internal. I mean, it's a horse piece. But did I answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe like explain what is muscle testing, like how do you do it or how does somebody do it?
Well,
So for the
that's going
people
to
who don't
be
know.
right. So, like I said, muscle testing was very little part of I did
Uh-huh.
mainly dowsing. Yeah. But muscle testing, you're using someone's, typically the arm,
Uh-huh.
and you're asking the body what they need, whether it could be a supplement. You could ask other questions too, but it needs to be something, a type of question that's going to either get a yes or no answer. You could be asking what is the highest priority for this person right now and have a list to pick from. So you're essentially using one arm. You aren't using a certain that was another thing that people would say you're pushing harder. And really, if you're good at what you do when you muscle test, you're not. You're
Hmm.
simply just using a slight pressure, and it's the body that is giving the answer. But a lot of people don't feel that. So it can be conflicting for the patient that's sitting there and wondering what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
But it is the body responding to essentially questions. It's your nervous system responding. And I think it's so just some thing people, it feels so weird because we're not taught that we have the answers within and that our bodies can tell us the answers if we ask the right questions. So it feels really unfamiliar for majority of people.
Of people. Yeah. And what is dowsing exactly?
Dowsing, you're using a pendulum and you're asking questions. It's the same
Okay.
thing, but you're not necessarily touching the person.
Hmm.
Instead, I would use a person's picture. I could be holding their hand, but I would have people that would send me their picture from all over the country, and I would douse them for whatever they needed at that time.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
essentially, that was a start to kind of the work that I was doing. I eventually got into, testing for other things like belief systems and stuff like that. But once I got to do what I'm doing now, it was really like it's not a practical thing for me to do anymore. To sit there and do that work is very tedious. It is exhausting if you do readings all day long on people. When if you know how to work with the subconscious mind and ask the right questions, you can get the same answers and you don't have to exert all that energy towards testing somebody.
Yeah. It's just a tool to help you, I suppose, trust that what you're intuitively
Yeah.
receiving is. And then once you have enough trust, and you're like, okay, done with that tool. Now I can just
Yeah.
do it. Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so then once you started doing your business, you said that it was not working as well because you were in turmoil within.
Well, I was just extremely stressed,
Mm.
not in a healthy way at all when it comes to running a business. And because I got myself into something I had no experience, had no understanding of really what to do, right? And then to be honest with you, I planted this business in the middle of a small town that was basically composed of churches and bars. So um,
Perfect.
It was not, I had so much judgment. I had so much coming at me. I had people writing me awful notes and leaving them in my mailbox. I had people coming in trying to save me every single day, saying I'm doing the work of the devil. It was definitely a time for me to build up the callus, but it took some time. It definitely, I let it affect me more than what I, would do with something like that now, because of course that callus has been formed. But it definitely was a hard time in my life to really start accepting who I was and what I was doing. There was a lot of judgment there.
That's amazing. I mean, like even now, people waking up and beginning to lean into any type of metaphysics. There's a huge community online that you can just reach out and find someone like you and be like, no, I'm not crazy. Here it is. But
Yeah.
back then, like this community was not there. So
You make a very good point. There was no place for me to go.
yeah.
Facebook like wasn't even around, and if it was barely starting, right? And
Uh-huh.
my dad really has never had any judgment on me. He just was like, "You do your thing," right? But my mom's side of the family, they were all very strict Catholics.
Mm.
So, my mom thought I was in a cult and everything else. There wasn't really a lot of understanding of the work that I was doing, nor a desire, a lot of judgment, from family, friends, all of it. And I had to be able to stand strong in my own skin. And there were days that it was really hard. It was.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's commendable, especially you were so young and doing it on yourself by
Yeah.
yourself. So okay, so then at what point did you come to the realization that there was some type of inner healing that you needed to go down and figure out?
Yeah. And I think I knew that on some level, but I was just so busy, I put it on the back burner. I didn't even, for someone that was helping people with their health, I didn't even exercise. I didn't really even eat right because I got home at 8 o'clock at night. My husband had a dinner plate ready for me, and I was back at work at 7 o'clock the next morning. I mean, I was not living healthy in any way, So I knew internally this wasn't working, but what else are you going to do when you're trying to, make your business run? So there was a lot of, I know this is going on, but I'm putting me in the back burner because I have to survive. Granted, what I know now is completely opposite, right? So for me, towards the end, towards my eighth, ninth, and 10th year of business, I did start moving into doing more intuitive work for myself and having a lot of other intuitives, or even just in general, more spiritual type of healing come into my business, and help me and have other practitioners there. But I eventually, at around 10 years of business, I think it was, gosh, it feels like a whole different lifetime for me because it was for 10 years, and it was a big part of my life, but it literally feels like this is hard to go back and remember it all because it literally feels like it was some time way many more than 15, 20 years ago. um
Yeah.
but basically, I got pregnant. And when I had my son, it got to be where I couldn't handle both. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to be at work at my business so much that I wasn't able to see him. And there was just a lot of stress going on. And I said, something's got to go. And I woke up one day and said, I'm selling the business. Um, and I went to a client of mine at the time and I said, I'm selling the business. I don't know. I woke up thinking I need to talk to you about it. And she's like, I'll buy it. And she bought it, but it ended up flopping because I was the business. I was the business that was, people would come in, where's Jenny? I need to talk to her. I need her to test me. There wasn't, the business was me. And essentially it failed because of that. But it was after I sold it, after I had my son, we moved, and left the town that I was in. And that's when everything just kind of exploded when I went to the new location that we moved to. And I didn't know who I was. I was like for 10 years, probably even a little bit more because in high school I was already studying the holistic world. I didn't know what to do. So there was a lot of soul searching. There was a lot of what should I study now? So I studied business to the point where I was learning about business systems, the things that I should have used more in my business that would have prevented me to be in overwhelm. And so I went into business systems and started helping other business owners organize their business. I also went and studied feng shui. There was just so much that was interesting to me, right? But I didn't really have like a job after that. It was like I'm just trying to figure things out. Worked part-time at I think it was a paint store, if I can remember. That was awful because I had to work for other people.
For the first time.
I was like, "What are you doing? You should be doing that." And but once you've done that for so long, it's hard to walk into someone else's business and see what they're doing, and
Hmm.
then the mistakes that you made be like, "Oh my goodness, I did the same thing. Let me help you." So I did that part time, and then my husband got another offer. It was about 3 years after we moved to this new location. He got offered to move again and have a better job than what we originally moved for. We said yes, and that is when everything exploded because he left to go to his new job, and I had to pack and get the house ready to be sold. And that's where everything exploded because I was trying to do so much. And I eventually burned myself out and ended up with chronic panic attacks. And that's where all it started.
Wow. There are so many things you said in that part of your story that just resonates so well because in the spiritual business, we go through all of those ups and downs, and we go through all the like this is not working and then stopping. But then I also feel that so many people are like, okay, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, and then they just give up as opposed to like, okay, maybe it's not working right now. Let me see what else I can do and explore different things
Hmm.
for it to take us to the next level. It just feels like a step, like a grounding step of like, okay, maybe I need to just stop all this, learn some more, right? Like you did, or maybe try something completely different so I really know that I don't want to work for somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love all of those that part that you're sharing this because people tend to see us or see an entrepreneur and feel like, oh, they have it done, or but they
Hmm.
don't really see all the steps that the person has gone through and all the different uh, roads that we have taken to get to where we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. All you see is what's happening now.
Right, right.
Everybody's like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be successful like you. It's like, it took me many years to get to this place. There's been ups and downs. There's been the judgment. There's been, you have to get up every day and have to fight for making money. That's not something that you have when you have a stable job that you go to. Not saying that being an entrepreneur is bad. I'm just saying there is a lot more to it than what people are seeing from the outside. And on top of that, like if you start a business with doing something that you love,
Mhm.
let's say you make something, or like me working one-on-one with clients, you can't just do that anymore. You now have to be the marketer. You now have to be the person that is customer service. You're having to do all this stuff behind the scenes in addition to working or making your product. And if you stay stuck doing all of that, you will burn out. That was my downside when I with my first business, that I was afraid to delegate. And the
Mm.
things that I was delegating were super easy stuff. I did have employees, but not the stuff that I should have so that I could have been making more money, generating more leads coming in and prospects coming in. I was putting my energy towards the daily tasks that didn't make money. It was just keeping me busy.
Yeah.
And I became obsessed with learning business systems after I sold my business because somebody handed me the book. I don't even know where this book came from, but somebody came up to me and says, "You need to read this book." And it was E-Myth. It's an old book, but it's called the E-Myth. And he says, "This is where you went wrong with your business." And I
Wow.
read this and I go, this is exactly where I went wrong. And it was all about business systems. And I became in love with business systems of understanding. what behind the scenes you have to have set up so you can take a vacation and have that business run without you, which I could have never done. I
Hmm.
remember I took a day off one time running my health and wellness, and I was walking out the door with somebody else to go somewhere. And a customer said to me, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm taking the day off for today." And they're like, "Well, what are we, how we know what to buy?" And I'm like, "I got employees in there. They got it." They're like, "No, we need you." It was like, oh my goodness. I should have left off the back door instead of the front door. But it was very hard for me to leave because the business was me and that wasn't a healthy place to be, nor was it the reason why you start a business, right? You want a business for freedom, not to be tied down.
Oh, gold right there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then you became ill. And what
Yes.
happened? Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
I actually had my first panic attack on our anniversary. So my husband was gone
Hmm.
and it was our anniversary night and I remember just getting off the phone, just talking to him, going to bed. I did some stretches in the living room, went to bed, and as soon as I laid down, I had this feel like this bump in my chest, like how my heart just went really big thump and got like this really hotness all over me and I immediately started to shake and everything else. So I flew out of bed and grabbed the phone and just like sat in the hallway and just was shaking. And my whole body, just felt like out of control. And I thought I was having a heart attack. Didn't know at the time it was a panic attack. Called the ambulance. They came and they said, "You've got the healthiest heart rate we'd ever seen." We don't know what happened. Did you drink some tea or anything with caffeine? I said, "No." So then they left and then they came back. It happened again. And I called them back and they came back. And mind you, at the time, my son was, I think, about 4, 5, maybe a little bit older. And the ambulance came in. There was nobody else at my home, and we didn't know anybody. Like, we were there for 3 years. And we literally, like, it feels like we unpacked and then had to repack again. So that we didn't have a lot of neighbors because we were in the middle of the woods. So just calling somebody to say, "Hey, watch my son when I go to the hospital" was impossible. So they put my son and me in the ambulance. This is a really small town up in northern Wisconsin. And when I was done there, after they determined there was nothing wrong with me, I just had a, you know, freak experience. They didn't tell me panic attack either. And then they drove me home, which they never do. The ambulance doesn't typically drive you and your son back home
Hmm.
after going to the emergency. So they brought us back home. And from that day, I had continuous panic attacks, 1 to 2 probably per day,
Wow.
um, and went completely downhill. My husband came home. It was a week later, and I could not drive. I couldn't even make dinner. And he is like, "What has happened to you?" And I said, "I don't know what's happening." And I mean, I had many ER visits after that. I remember my mom came to stay with me while we were in this moving phase, and she went to the ER because I woke her up in the middle of the night. "It's happening again, Mom." She brought me there, and it was probably the third or fourth time finally when a doctor said to me, "You are having panic attacks." And I had no idea what those were. Um, and then on top of that, just these episodes throughout the day of just feeling like I was going to pass out, being extremely cold, all of the symptoms of your nervous system being in overdrive. Um, so once we moved, the moving process wasn't easy because I couldn't drive. And I remember my husband was in our new location where we are now, and I had the responsibility of bringing the dogs back, uh, and my son and the plants all in the truck. And I remember driving down the road and I got so dizzy and I was probably 10 miles out of town. I pulled over and I'm like, "I can't do this. I'm going to kill us, all of us. We're all going to die because I'm having these panic attacks when I'm driving." So my husband, who's 2 hours away, had to come and get us with
Wow.
my brother. So we sat in the side of the road for 2 hours. I'm sure that if I would have let the panic attack pass and then get back on, it might have been better, but who knows? Either way, he had to come back. And I stopped driving after that for almost 3 years, because I then became in fear of driving, and that became a whole roller coaster, right? So
Hmm.
all of this became like this big old track in my subconscious of driving is scary and this is going to happen. And, having my son in the car and the animals and all of that, that was just not something that I felt comfortable going forward with. But even by myself, I
Yeah.
attempted to drive and I couldn't do it.
That's yeah, incredible. I've spoken to other people who have had the panic attacks, and it's just kind of like a culmination of everything we are holding within,
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
letting it come out, and then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, I'm full. Here you go.
Yeah. Bucket's full. We're overflowing.
Yeah. So 3 years, what did you do during those 3 years to help yourself?
Oh, we tried everything. Prior to moving from the last location, I started already digging into trying to get some help. And,
Hmm.
here I am, a holistic practitioner, knowing how to help other people, or at least thinking I know how to help other people,
Hmm.
trying my own protocols. Nothing's working. Of course, I think I need to detox. I think it might be metals. I think I need, to detox for parasites. So I did all that stuff, changed the diet, got to get rid of gluten, did the standard protocol for myself. But that didn't do anything. So I started then working with other practitioners that really essentially did the same work as me, just maybe slightly different. I still got a bunch of supplements, still was told certain foods not to eat and things like that. I wasn't able to drive for 3 years. So I essentially stayed in the house. Even my son got on a bus to go to school. And I remember one time he was sick and they called me and said, Logan's sick. Someone needs to come pick him up. And I'm like, my husband's at work. He can't leave and I can't drive. So they had to bring him home. I mean, it was just a very small, I was living in this small world. It just felt like a cage. And I couldn't go grocery shopping anymore. My husband was doing all of that. I could see the stress, was starting to wear on him. And we sold, right in the process of moving, I'm looking for answers. We sold my husband's boat. We sold all of his, toys. He had a dirt bike, a snowmobile, all the fun toys that a guy has, right?
Hmm.
Sold it all because the places I was going were thousands of dollars just to walk in for one appointment. Whether they were doing ozone therapy, supplements, doing blood tests, all of it. You're going in and you're spending thousands of dollars, and we got rid of everything just to try and get help. Um, and I did that for a while. I went to a center that was about 3 hours away down in Madison. I did that every other week. And they too were very similar, a bunch of supplements, and did some type of therapy that they attached to me when I was there. And then, coffee enemas and you name it, I did it all, right? But it was really not getting me anywhere. And I eventually said, because my husband was getting burned out, he was like, we can't financially do this anymore. You keep grabbing for these supplements every time you have a symptom, and this isn't the answer anymore. And I, of course, wasn't really happy with him saying that because this is the answer. This is what fixes everybody, right?
Hmm.
And he's like, this isn't it. We have got thousands of dollars when you open that cabinet, and none of that is helping you. And you are so reliant on these external protocols. There's something else going on. And whether I liked it or not, he was right.
Hmm.
And there was a part of me that said, I need to start looking for help with my emotions, help with my trauma, whatever the stress is that's showing itself. And I searched and I searched, and I just felt like I never found like the absolute thing. It was, I would call somebody and say, hey, do you help people with emotions? Um, kind of. We kind of do. So then it led into I was searching and bouncing to all these different practitioners that were helping with emotional things, which basically they would help me identify emotion and then use EFT to tap it out. Okay, it was great during the session, but then when I left the session, it was like I'm the same person at home. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing any differently. Um, and then I don't know where I found the information, but I also bought a zapping machine from I think it was from China. That's where they originate. What is it called? The Zapper 2.0 or something like that. Oh, it's sorry. I can't remember the exact name, but either way, I bought this machine and I had it in my bedroom and I literally attached these wires up to myself. And then you put a certain vibration into the computer saying what vibration you want it to be giving you. And
Hmm.
it had codes for everything. It had a book and there was a Facebook group at the time for this particular thing. And I put the charger cords on me or whatever you want to call it. I zapped myself. It zapped my skin to where I have scars on it now.
Wow.
I was so desperate thinking that I could zap away my emotions. I could zap away the trauma because going inside was just so uncomfortable, right? To actually go back and feel those feelings again and talk about all of the hurts. It would be a lot easier if I could just have a flow or essence, or we could just tap out this emotion. So I was slowly, finding answers with every person I went to. But there
Hmm.
wasn't really a solid thing that was like, oh, this is it. I had so much piecing together of everything. And I don't know what brought me to subconscious work, to be honest with you. I know it was from Googling. I Googled something about, healing using the subconscious or emotion connection. I found Psych K, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Psych K or not.
I've heard about it. I had somebody that I work with that was doing that. And I was like, what is that? I had never heard of it. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Psych K is probably where the opening to the subconscious work happened for me,
Hmm.
because I started following information about what Bruce Lipton would say. He, would say that your environment is created based on your perception and your biology changes based on your environment, and it was intriguing. And Bruce Lipton is I don't know if he is the actual originator of Psych K or he just supports it. Either way, it led me to Psych K because his name was connected to it. So, and also when I learned about Psyche, they use muscle testing to identify the beliefs. So I went and learned Psyche and I went to level 3. So while I'm sick, I mean, I had chronic cystitis, meaning feels like you have a bladder infection for 3 years straight. So I got on the plane, and with the cystitis, with all the panic attacks, got on the plane to learn Psych K. Had panic attacks in my hotel room, had the ambulance come to my hotel room. Uh,
God.
it was like I'm in a different place, but it's still happening the same exact way.
Uh-huh.
And learned Psych K and started to see these connections of what was underneath a lot of what I thought was the problem. And what we think is the problem is never the problem. It's just the surface level. There's always
Hmm.
something much deeper. And it helped me to see, oh, there's something much deeper to this. Um, I did it for a little while, but again, it required muscle testing that I was trying to get away from. And I also thought, well, if I'm going to do this with other people, this is just me repeating myself with different protocols, same tools, and it was a turnoff for me. But it was a beginning point for me to start learning about the power of the subconscious mind and these patterns that we have within us that are ultimately telling our body to adapt and not to adapt. And that led me to more subconscious studies, just buying every book I could. Um, I also learned some German New Medicine. I have learned so many things that I eventually just put it all together of everything I learned and said, this is what I'm needing. I need repetition every day to rewire these old patterns. No one was telling me that, but once I read and understood the subconscious mind, it's like, well, I'm not doing anything daily here to rewire and become my 2.0 self besides these sessions I'm having, every week or every 2 weeks with a practitioner, which are leaving me feeling good, but I'm not really knowing what I'm supposed to do in between that. So there was a lot of missing pieces for me that was just like, I like this information, but it doesn't feel right yet. So I just kept gathering. And that's when somebody says to me or asks me, what specifically, did you do to get well? I did a lot of things and then created my own thing based of all of those things and my own understanding.
I love it. One of the key things that you mentioned was the repetition,
Yes.
right? Because so many of us, and with everything, right? You start a diet and you do it for 3 days and you give up, or 3 weeks, or
Yes.
whatever, and it's like, oh, that didn't work for me. Did it work, or did you give up and stop
Yes.
it, right? So with
Yes.
everything, it is that repetition because we do need to form that new habit, and we need to reform the subconscious.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So
And even,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry. Even how I woke up every day. When
Hmm.
you're chronically ill, you wake up and you scan your body, wonder what is going to hurt today. You look in the mirror. I mean, I had chronic rosacea too. I mean, my list was 20 symptoms. If I remember them now, I can maybe remember 3, but I had chronic rosacea as well. So I woke up in the morning and the first thing I did was look in the mirror and go, is it gone yet? And so it started my day, this habit, this pattern in my brain of what's wrong with me And
Mm.
then it was just a big old rabbit hole that I fell into for the rest of the day. And during the day, I was doing nothing but researching. So keeping that pattern in my brain and the fear was not helping. And I would go to bed worrying about having a panic attack at night. So I didn't fall asleep. So I wasn't getting proper sleep. So once I realized just the way that my day was going and the thoughts and the patterns that I was choosing to give power were not helping me, they were actually keeping my nervous system on fire, just changing my morning routine. I woke up and I visualized what I wanted in my life, what I wanted to be doing, and focused on the things I was grateful for rather than these things that I was going to complain about. And then throughout the day, I danced, I hummed, I said affirmations, but I also would have opportunities where, oh, this is a trigger for me. This makes me feel overwhelmed or whatever it may be. Now, how am I going to respond differently? Because I could respond the old way and go into panic because I think I need to get all these 100 things done right now. That's overwhelm. That's panic right there. And I had to learn, okay, I need to take one thing at a time. I have too high expectations of myself right now. So it was that in addition to these little tools that can help you rewire and create new patterns in your brain of the smiling, the dancing, the visualization. Those are all helpful. But I also had to do the work on the old patterns that were showing up. And I had to have enough awareness to say, that's an oldie. It needs to go. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Okay, I love it. I mean, it's just kind of like you find yourself in this situation and you really have to figure it all out by yourself until you come up with the best medicine for you,
Hmm.
what works
Hmm.
for you. So once you did that, like how did you start seeing results pretty fast, or like how did that happen? When did you start to see like, oh, actually this is working?
Yeah, and here's what a majority of people, when they start doing any type of rewiring work, they're looking for the symptoms to go away.
Uh-huh.
Not saying I didn't do that, but it is a natural thing that we're doing because we want the symptoms to go. So I chose to say I'm not focusing on the symptoms. I am focusing on working on what I'm doing mentally and my mental shifts because I know, learning from what I learned, that my body is not going to heal until my mind is at peace. So, and that requires a lot of discipline. And I will say I'm naturally a very disciplined person. Like if someone gives me a routine, I'm on it. If I stray from it, it might very rarely happen. And then when I do, I'm right back on it. So for me, discipline was the key to the success, because if you're not disciplined with this work, which we've been disciplined for our entire lives, if we really want to look at it with our old patterns, we keep repeating the same thing. We're doing it every single day, the old habits that we unconsciously wired into ourselves. We have to be that disciplined to rewire the things that we want. And so we're just looking at it in a different way of I unconsciously wired myself to do this and I did it on a daily basis, not knowing it. Now I have to shift into this is who I want to become. And in order to do that, I have to be repetitive every single day, be disciplined with it, not to the level of perfection, because there's some days that I only did it 10%. Some days I only did it, I did it 80% better than others. Same thing we tell our clients. We don't want this perfection, but if you did 10% today or 5% better than you did yesterday, it's progress. We just don't want you stopping completely. That discipline and repetitiveness, I noticed mental changes very quickly, very quickly. My symptoms, majority of them were gone except for the rosacea within 6 months. And
And that's after having it for like 3 years.
correct, yes, yes.
That's
So it was,
amazing.
in my eyes, it was fairly quickly when you have years of patterns, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I made it my mission every day to step into 2.0 me. And I didn't have a job. I was at home, so I could put my attention to that all the time. But I also knew that I didn't want to make like how we do anything is how we do everything, right? If we go from feeling like we have to fix ourselves all day long with diet and food and that protocol and do something all day long to fix me, and I just do that same thing with this rewiring process, that's not really calming to the nervous system to make that to be a full-time job either. So I had to switch and say, I got to let go of everything I learned and start fresh. And man, that was hard because you have years of all this learning, all these certificates, all this work that you've done, right? To say, this is what I know. But this also has led me to where I'm not getting answers anymore. And I have to pretend like I don't know that stuff anymore. And I cleared the slate and just said, we're going to the next level here of understanding the body in a whole different way. There were definite days that was back and forth. I cleared out the stuff out of my the supplement cabinet so I couldn't go and reach for it the second I had a symptom because that was the old me, right? You have a symptom, I got to take something to get rid of it and not be comfortable with the discomfort that comes with healing, just immediately wanting to get rid of it. So there was a lot of disciplined work around them old temptations that you have to be willing to say, nope, not willing to do that anymore. We can't do that. It wasn't working. And just that back and forth that happens with the rewiring process from old pattern to new pattern until eventually that new pattern takes over.
Did you create some type of affirmation or some type of phrase that you would repeat to yourself when in respect to any particular thing that you were moving to switch in your subconscious?
When you said that, for some reason, I remember saying, I'm happy, healthy, healing, and strong. I
Mm-hmm.
think I literally like saying it all day long with a smile. The smile is so
Uh-huh.
powerful
Yes.
because you can't be like your brain is getting the happy chemicals while you're smiling, even if you're
Mm-hmm.
faking it. Um, so there was a lot of that. Um, that was the main, like, just helping me to feel better about my body, not be in fear of it, because really that's the first step in this whole process is if you're in fear of your body, we got to work on that first. We have to have an understanding of healing, just like a cut and a broken bone. It's going to be painful. There's going to be swelling. There's going to be oozing. That's the healing process. And if we see that as being something we have to fix immediately, then we're in a constant state of fear with our body. So for me, it was understanding my body biologically first and understanding, okay, this rash in my face actually means I'm healing, but because it's not going away, it's because I'm constantly getting triggered and my body doesn't feel safe enough to heal because it's still getting a message that there's a threat coming in. So I had to look at it and go, this is healing. This doesn't need to be fixed. And that is a whole paradigm shift, right? In itself of just because what we're socially told, you have to go fix this right away. There's something wrong with your body. We now have to shift that and say, this is actually doing exactly what I'm designed to do.
Yes. There's so many videos and so many teachers out there talking about the power of affirmations and repetition and all of these things that do bring the subconscious to shift into what we want. But for so many people who try it and they go down that path and they say it, they say it, they say it, but they don't see results. Obviously, we know it's because they're still looking for the evidence, which is the negation of what you just said.
Yeah.
But what do you feel would be helpful for someone who's like, not that again, or that doesn't work for me, for them to actually try it and have a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel when they're doing it so that they can begin to heal? Because it is as simple as that. It's just that we're so programmed to say, I want this and I want it at this time. And when you don't
Right.
see it, I failed or it doesn't work. So what would you
Mhm.
tell somebody so that they can get through that belief that it's not working or that it wouldn't work for them and they can move on?
Okay. And you're referring specifically to affirmations?
Yeah, because I mean that's what we're just talking about, like the
Sure.
things that you started with to begin
hmm
to shift the way that you felt about yourself or the way that you saw yourself. Like you saw
hmm
yourself as broken or something wrong with me, and you had to begin to just switch that first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure when it comes to affirmations, there's a couple things.
Hmm.
First of all, it's not going to be the only thing you need to do to heal. Okay. Because here's what most people are doing. So if they hear the reason my body's not healing is because it doesn't feel safe, which is 100% true.
Hmm.
Okay. Your body doesn't feel safe, which is why it's adapting. So then people will say to me, well, all day long, I just tell myself I'm safe. Well, that's okay to be saying, but your subconscious, you got to remember, has stored files since you've been born and even in the womb, right?
Hmm.
So those files it's referencing all day long, and all day long it's saying, by you saying that, we have all this proof saying you're not safe.
Hmm.
So there are certain affirmations that I say, if you're going to start with affirmations, you got to do some very basic ones just to shift the way you think about your body. Because if you start and say, if you identify a belief like I'm not good enough, and all you do say it, all you say is I am good enough, that's going to be a really hard uphill battle because there's so much proof in your subconscious that you need actual subconscious work to unwire that before you start saying that affirmation. So that's the deeper level work. The affirmations come in helpful when you're tempted or when you notice with your awareness muscle that you're going towards looking at your symptoms or panicking about your symptoms. So this is where we use affirmations with our students. We say the affirmations aren't going to be 100% the solution to your symptom, but they're going to help pull you out in those moments where you're tempted to focus on your symptom. So as soon as you notice, hey, my brain is going to scanning my body or wanting to Google something, you pause. And that's where you say, that's right, my body is healing. It is working perfectly. And having the understanding, first of all, of how this all works prior to saying that is helpful, meaning understanding that your body, your symptoms are adaptation in your body. That is how we are biologically designed. If our brain says, I'm getting a message of threat, and we're not shifting that message of threat, then the backup system is essentially our body. So if I understand, okay, my body is doing this because it's adapting to my internal messages. Now I have a good solid foundation of understanding why my body is doing what it's doing. I don't need to panic anymore. So having that solid foundation of understanding is really important because then when you apply this affirmation, it feels much more true. Versus if you have the same way of thinking of, you know, illness is a disease, you got to go kill the bad stuff in your body, blah, blah, blah. If you still have that perspective and then you say, my body is healing, I'm I'm healthy, happy, and strong, it's going to be like, this doesn't feel very good. When we have that solid foundation of simply understanding how our body works, and then saying in those moments when our brain goes into those automatic patterns, which we don't want to stop them because you can't, it's an old record that's playing. But when it shows up, that's when you say, all right, I got this. I'm healing. I'm happy, healthy, and strong. And that you keep doing that to what we call T-bone those old patterns in your brain. And every time you do that, so let's think about it. If you um, get focused on a symptom and go down the rabbit hole and start panicking, whatever, that activates your sympathetic nervous system. You're now telling your body it's time to react because we're under stress, we're under threat, and it's going to amplify your symptoms, going to make you feel even more like poo. Okay, but if we interrupt that as soon as we notice with our awareness muscle, I'm going down the rabbit hole. All right, I'm smiling. I'm thinking about my future visualization. And I'm saying to myself, I'm happy, healthy, and strong. Boom, right? That stops that pattern in its tracks. And it tells my body, oh, we are actually safe. We don't have to respond. So you're naturally calming down your nervous system with this simple tool. We call it a message of safety, that you're giving your body messages of safety and breaking those old patterns, doing a T-bone. And that is going to help calm you down so that when you need to do the deep level work, you're in a healthy state. So, what we do is messages of safety first, MOS first, to help calm things down and shift your constant focus and hypervigilance on your body first.
Amazing. I love your explanation. You really went down all of the places. Thank
Yes.
you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so then you created your own way of healing through trial and error, and then you saw yourself coming out of it, and then did you decide to start a new business to help people with it, or how did that turn out? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was in my visualization that I was actually going to I visualized myself being on Zoom teaching
Okay.
while I was and you 5 years prior to that you would have talked to me and I would have said, nope, never helping people again with their health.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know when it was. I think it was when I was studying feng shui and I was just really lost. Like, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to use this feng shui with helping people with their business and organizing it? Where is this coming? And I had a reading from somebody, and she said to me, Jenny, you are not done helping people yet. And I was like, what? That burned me out last time. What do you mean? She's like, you are not done. And I went back to that when I started my business because I was like, dang it, she was right. As much as I want to resist that, there's this naturally in me that is not going away, that I have to teach something that on some level is rebellious. I was rebellious when I was 20, teaching something that people back then are totally cool with now. They love
Hmm.
supplements and diets and protocols. That's what I was doing back then. And nobody was on board. And I was a rebel. And now I'm doing something that is even, same thing, very different, hard for people to really grasp just based on how we're programmed. And I'm paving that way again. And that is, I think, just what I'm here for, is to pave the way, be that rebellious healer, which is the name of my podcast.
Oh, nice.
Because we got to be rebellious if we're gonna heal. Whether it means that you're doing something completely different or something that's common with other people, you have to be rebellious in that you're willing to be uncomfortable and do something that's going to create change. And for me, my protocol that I developed was from the protocol that I did for myself. Just seeing what was missing, knowing what was working, those everyday things that I did to rewire my brain to just elevate the way that my mental state was. My husband would come home before me doing that work. He'd be seeing me sit on the couch with a frown on my face. He wasn't excited to come home and see that every single day. And then he started coming home, and I'm in the kitchen, music blasting with a smile on my face. And he's like, what is going on? I'm like, I'm feeling so much better mentally, right? It doesn't mean the panic attacks were done then or my cystitis was gone, but mentally I was better. So I knew that worked. And then I had to start digging into my trauma. I had to start digging into what's really keeping this, because that surface level work is only going to take you so far. You can
Hmm.
do the affirmations, the smiling, the visualization. That's very helpful, but it doesn't go to the deep enough level of why is your bucket full to begin with? What exactly is driving this? Well, you're driving yourself in overwhelm because you're trying to prove yourself to your parents that you didn't get when you were a child. I had significant trauma with my dad. He was basically criminal my entire life as a child. So he was in and out of jail. Didn't have that solid, but there were a lot of experiences that there was so much judgment from things that were happening in my environment from the community I lived in. So there was that. Judgment for me was like from day one of birth until, well into my 30s. That was a pattern for me of I'm in fear of being judged, which had a lot to do with my rosacea. I was embarrassed and shameful, and I had to wear a mask. That's what the rosacea was about, was I had to wear a mask. I didn't want to be shown. So I had to dig into all of these connections because my body, each specific symptom I have, had a specific connection to it. The rosacea was the mask. The bladder was a lack of boundaries. And our body systems tell us that. That's what I learned through a lot of my deep level subconscious work and German new medicine, combining that and looking and saying, this is how we're biologically designed. If our brain gets assigned our message that we're shameful and want to hide, what is it going to naturally do? It's going to create something as a mask to prevent us from being seen,
Hmm.
or a rash to help us separate from something. So these adaptations symptoms in my body were telling me the areas I needed to work on. And I also needed to look at what benefits being ill gave me. This is a hard area for people to dig into, but there's so much within this and there's so much power within it. I was in fear of getting in overwhelm again. That if I go back to being the old me, I'm going to get overwhelmed again and I'm going to burn out. I don't want that. I'm going to have to go work for somebody because at the time I didn't have the vision. I wanted to, have my own business with this. It was I have to go work for somebody else. I don't want to work for somebody else. And I get a little bit of attention from my husband when I'm sick, more than what he normally gives me. So there are benefits there that we have to also, that's that very deep layer. of the secondary gains of what on the other side of illness is so scary that I'm resisting getting well. So I had to
Oh,
work on all
that's a
those areas.
great question. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, the secondary gain work is my most favorite work because here's the thing is once you see that, you can't unsee it. Once you see, okay, yeah, I totally see that these are the benefits. And now I have to be willing to do the work to train my nervous system to work on the parts of me that are scared to step into me. So I have to be willing to be uncomfortable and stand in my own, be in my own skin and have some people not like me. You know, that for me, judgment was huge my entire life. And if I wasn't liked, how could I have this business or how could I go work for somebody else? So I had to work on just loving me and stop giving a crap about what everybody was thinking. So it required me when I saw that list of the secondary gains, I then had to make an action plan. What are the actions I'm going to have to take to train my subconscious, train my nervous system that doing these things are safe? And once it believes that and feels it, because I have to do it in order to really rewire, then it says we're now safe to heal. So I had to work on that. I had to work on the overwhelm of why I was getting overwhelmed because I had these high expectations of myself because I gave myself a list of so many things to do and then I never met them and felt like I wasn't enough because I couldn't finish this list. Well, I needed to learn with the fact that I'm only human. I can probably get only 3 things on my list done in a day, and that's fine. Or sometimes zero. You know what I'm saying? So there was just and that was wired from childhood of you got to do. You can't sit on that couch and relax. You got to be doing something all the time. So we have to look at these old patterns that were part of our survival as children, but they're not working for us as adults anymore. And I had to look at all of that. So once I did all that work, essentially created my own program to work with the surface level tools, the happy stuff, the affirmations, the smiling. That's at surface level. I combined that with the secondary gain work and the trauma work. And when you put that all together, the nervous system feels super safe. And that's when it gives the body permission to complete that healing process.
I love it. That's a really different way of looking at things and
Mhm.
bringing everything together. It just feels really nurturing. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. So, Jenny, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to share with the audience?
I don't know. I mean, really depends on no, I don't have anything specifically that I would have to, yeah, I mean, it could go anywhere, right?
Uh-huh.
But based on the questions that you asked and my history and where I've been, that the whole story is there.
Amazing. Where can people reach you? Where can they get in touch with you?
Couple places. I have a podcast called The Rebellious Healer. That is where you can listen. I have 2 podcasts per week. The mindbodyrewire.com is my website. That's where you can find information about me, my business, and how to start working with us. I'm on Instagram at the Mind Body Rewire and Facebook as well, Mind Body Rewire, and YouTube and TikTok.
Amazing. And I'm going to put all of that information down on the notes. So anyone
Yeah.
who didn't have a pen or wants to get it, just make sure you go down there and see how to get in touch with Jenny. This is, has been an eye-opening
Mhm.
conversation. Thank you so much for sharing and being here on Healing Through You.
Well, thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I just was floored with this interview. I found it so relatable to what so many things that we are going through right now, especially if you're just awakening or becoming aware of your own healing. You're doing a lot of surface healing, which is like the affirmations or like things like that. And knowing that if it's not working out for you, it's because there might be something deeper that you need to look into and get help. So that's one of the reasons that I do this podcast, so that you are aware of what's there, of what's available. And again, you don't have to work with anyone. Like I work with somebody, but she figured it out on her own But what you do receive when you do decide to work with someone is that your time gets cut because you're being led by someone who's already done the work and can tell you exactly where to go, and it doesn't have to take that long. Does that make sense? So yeah, that I wanted to say that if you're finding this podcast interesting or helpful for you, please subscribe or give it a like or put a comment, because all of those things are ways that you can help us, this podcast, to be found and be reached more people. And also, if you would like to share with other people, I would love that. Thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you next time. Bye bye.